Okay, this is Thomas Freed on the Liberty Works Radio Network. This is the Truth Attack Hour, and yes, that's right, folks. We're back with the Truth Attack. Okay, so we are the Liberty Works Radio Network, and we do need the support of the members of the broadcast listening audience to keep the network operating. So, if you enjoy the shows, the information, the discussions, the lectures, the revelations, and the guests and the hosts on the other shows on the network, we sure would appreciate it if you can find your way over to the LibertyWorksRadioNetwork.com website. It's all one long string. If you're not already there listening through the online radio listening link for national radio, we sure would appreciate it if you could find your way over and get signed up as a subscribing member, even if it's as little as $10, $15, $20 a month. Every membership counts, and we do need your support to keep the broadcast network operating. So there you go. And if you enjoy the information about my favorite topic on this particular version of the Truth Attack Hour every Thursday evening at 6 o'clock on the LibertyWorksRadioNetwork.com website, you should find your way over to the TaxFreedom.com website and start reading and get educated, because the Supreme Court has told you the truth about the income tax, which the circuit courts and the lower court judges have been lying to you about for 75 years. There is no tax on your right to work. There is no tax on your private activities or the earnings or income derived from them within the 50 states where those activities and transactions are not subject to any federal indirect taxation by impost, duty, or excise. Impost tax is foreign activity, and that's the power the original income tax was enacted under as a tariff act, the power to tax foreign persons, not citizens. Only foreign persons and persons in the U.S. territories and possessions. And that's what's reflected in the 1939 law, and that's what was enforced up until the victory tax in 1942. At which point, judicial legislation took over, and the court started making it all up. And, Korematsu, that's where they made up the right to inter everyone of Japanese descent, regardless of citizenship. Regardless of citizenship, just lock them up? How insane did the federal courts go in 1942? How far did they go to the extreme to support the government and enslave the American people to whatever efforts the government decided to endeavor and undertake? The federal courts have been betraying the American people since the Roosevelt era, when they reversed their original Supreme Court decision 2 years after it was handed down. In 1935, in Alton Railroad, they said Social Security and Congress legislating for the future well-being or current well-being of the American people was outside the orbit of congressional power. Outside the orbit of congressional power. Social Security is unconstitutional. You're not authorized to legislate for future fears or concerns or insecurities. Are you insane? You could make up any story you wanted and take whatever you wanted on the premise, guise and pretense, something terrible might happen in the future. We'll take care of you, don't worry. We will. No, we'll take care of you, really. So since that era, the federal courts have been lying to the American people, enforcing judicial legislation and socialism. And now we see the fruits of that 75-year treason within the judicial branch of the government manifesting itself in the New York elections, don't we? Where all of the radical, they say Democrat socialists. They're not Democrat socialists. There's nothing democratic at all about what they're advocating for. They're communists. They're communists. They're advocating for the destruction of America, the absolute rule of the people by the government, and the Communist Party, of course, and the taking of private property to subsidize the enrichment of the Communist Party under the guise and pretense of helping the poor and the American people. You want to see how they help the American poor and people? Take a look at the New York City housing projects the city already owns. It's the worst landlord in the city. In Kansas City, they were the worst grocery store management in the country. Socialists don't provide. They lie, and then they steal everything that's not nailed down. And then they murder the people who own the things that are nailed down. That's the history of communist socialism. Pick a country: China, Russia, North Korea, Cuba, Venezuela, Zimbabwe. Go ahead, pick a country. Everywhere it's the same. Everywhere it's the same. And now New York City has bought into the socialist nonsense. It's no longer the Democrat Party. Of course, I've been telling you that for what, about 8 years? Ever since Bernie Sanders became the lead candidate in the 2016 election, displacing Hillary Clinton, who was then not democratically selected by the super delegates at the Democrat convention, who all ignored the fact that Bernie Sanders was the leading and most popular candidate and voted for Hillary Clinton, who at the time was the most unelectable candidate in the history of American politics, bar none. And of course, then they were all shocked when Trump won. So they internally attempted a silent coup by manufacturing false propaganda against Donald Trump and having the intelligence community advance it into the mainstream media. They should all be on trial for treason. And then they should be shot by firing squad when found guilty, because there's no way these people can't be found guilty. They made the story up. They knew it was made up by Hillary's campaign, and yet it was still advanced within the intelligence community with Obama and Biden's knowledge and approval, because it was more important to hate Trump than it was to preserve any sense at all of democracy in the United States of America. Because it's not the Democrat Party anymore. And it's not the Democrat Socialist Party. It's being taken over by the far extreme left communists, who will advance every plank of the Communist Manifesto, not just the two that we already have, or three: income tax, Federal Reserve Bank, public education. Well, then we go into the Department of Transportation, Department of Agriculture, Department of Energy. These are all things that are also in the Communist Manifesto. Absolute rule of every element of society by the federal government, which is not empowered by the Constitution to be involved in things like energy, education, agriculture, housing, health, education, and welfare, environment, occupational safety. Why isn't the federal government authorized? Because these are state duties to manage these arenas in their state. Because what grows in Texas won't grow in Maine. You need different policies. You can't subsidize one and not the other, which of course is what they've done. Chosen winners and pushed losers out the door. It's all unconstitutional, every single bit of it. But New York has embraced it, and they're showing you the true colors taken on by the Democratic Party. They're no longer for democracy. They're no longer for advancing the people. They've taken extreme positions that are intended to undermine society and overwhelm our social system's abilities to take care of the problem they created. What problem? 16 million illegal aliens in 4 years that are welfare dependent and are displacing in the liberal cities' budgets the priority to fund programs that will help Americans, and instead those funds are being given to the illegal aliens. But the populations in the inner city continue to vote for the Democrats who are, how shall we say it nicely, screwing them. Knowingly, intentionally lying to you, just like the judges who were lying to you about the income tax. So too were the communist Democrats lying to you about their intentions. Because look what they do. They budget out how many billions of dollars for homelessness in California? And did any of the money make it to the homeless? No, I'm afraid it didn't. All the money was given to NGOs. NGOs, what's NGO? Non-governmental organization. Where does the Constitution of California authorize the California legislature to fund NGOs? They're giving hundreds of millions of dollars to non-governmental operations who are then tasked with honestly passing the money out and accounting for it, but there is no accounting. And who knows what honestly passing the money out, because none of it is getting to the needy. They spent how many billions fighting homelessness, and it's grown, and there are no facilities or educations or training centers. You can deal with homeless, you got to teach them some skill or treat them for the mental illness, because that's what you really got, don't you? You have three demographics in your homeless population. You have the drug addicted who don't want to have anything to do with the state and need medical treatment. You have the insane who can't be dealt with because they're not rational and they don't want treatment. And then you have the actual people who were temporarily homeless because they lost their job or fell on economic times or had large medical bills, who you could help if you were able to focus your resources on helping those who wanted help and would help you give them help by taking care of the home or the apartment that you moved them into, by showing up for the job that they were given to earn the money, by not just using and abusing every aspect of the system to enrich themselves. And I think everybody knows that's what's happening, because what's going on with the NGOs is money's being sent out of the country, and then magically it comes back to the Democratic Party candidates as contributions. Oh, there's a surprise. This is Teapot Dome 100 years later. Bribe them up front, get the money contracts, and kick back dollars to the people that you bribed for the contract. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. And where did the money go? Where did the money go? $42 billion 5 years ago. Spanberger's bill in Virginia, 1 year into the Biden administration, $42 billion for rural internet. Anybody been hooked up? Nope, not yet. The one company that could do the hookup, Starlink, they pulled the contract. Starlink was ready to do it for $1,000 a person, $1,000 a house. Rural internet. Companies are competing that are being given the contract are charging over 80 grand. 80 to 100 grand per residence is what they want. Starlink is going to do it for 1,000, but no, we can't let them do it. That's Musk. God forbid we should use the best technology from the only company with a ring of satellites actually capable of delivering next week on what they promise. God forbid. All that money, where'd it go? $42 billion, where'd it go? Virginia, where she's governor, hasn't even spent the money. Why not give it to Starlink? Abigail, what's the problem? It was your program. You don't want Virginians to have internet? Go talk to Musk. It'll take a week. How about the EV recharging stations? $8 billion. I think they've built 12 so far. Where'd all the money go? Where'd it all go? $8 billion for 12 EV stations. How about the $1 trillion Green New Deal? Where'd all it go? See any new Green Deal projects? No, they don't exist. It's theft. It's fraud. As we've seen, so is the Medicare. This is Thomas Fried on the Liberty Works Radio Network. I hear that first commercial break coming up. We'll be back in 5 with more. Get tuned in. Okay, this is Thomas Fried on the Liberty Works Radio Network. Let's just get right back into this. As the commercial break came up, I was saying that, hey, there was that $1 trillion Green New Deal. Where'd all that money go? Where'd all the EV money go? Where'd the rural internet money go? Where'd all the healthcare fraud money go? Where'd all the senile care, the hospice care money go? These are all programs run by the Democrats who are in the states, who are now passing laws in those states not allowing any investigation into the fraud. Now, if that's not evidence of the fact that they're part of it, I don't know what would be. They're the ones getting the money from the kickbacks from the NGOs and the subsidies, and they don't want to investigate the fraud or the money flows. Gee, I wonder why. So all this money is disappearing into socialist systems that are going to build around the world this new world order of basically socialist communism, ruled by an elite Politburo from thousands of miles away that don't allow for any variation in policy or law, regardless of region or demographics. It's a prescription for mass murder, which is what's happened every time communists have taken over a country. China, Russia, Cuba, South Africa, Zimbabwe. How many people died in China from hunger, from imposed policies and killing the people who were smart enough to grow crops or talk about the natural order, humanity? They all got murdered. 40 million. Russia, 20 million. Socialism isn't for the people, it's to rule them. And New York, apparently, has been dumbed down to the extent where they don't understand that. And Minnesota has been diluted by importation to the point where that's the intention. To siphon money out of the U.S. off to a foreign country and back to the Democrat Socialist Party. The legislators in Minnesota allowing it. Same in California, the liberal states. As goes California and New York, so goes the Communist Party. Used to be the Democrat Party, skipped right over socialism, went right to communism. It's electing far left radical insanity. Literally Nazi policy. It's based on anti-Semitism and pro-Palestinian. And of course, the Palestinian position is kill every Jew and eliminate Israel entirely, because they've been offered a two-state solution 7 times, and it's always the Palestinians that reject it, because the only solution is a one-state solution with Palestine replacing Israel in every inch of territory that exists as Israel. Their solution is the elimination of Israel and the death of all Jews. This is Adolf Hitler. Come to New York City under the guise and pretense of Democrat Party? Are you kidding me? Is there anybody left in New York that knows how to think on the left? Apparently not. All 3 candidates won in a landslide. So New York is just a lost cause. Of course, that's why people have been leaving, and that exodus will continue. The only hope left is that some court will stop the open theft of property in New York that's sure to ensue under this communist piece of crap Mamdani, who just lies and steals. Lies and steals. That's his policy. Steal from the wealthy. Government by theft, robbery, and extortion. Just steal. Pick out a certain group of people and steal from them. That's the socialist policy. Pick out a group of people, billionaires, and steal from them. That's the Nazi policy. Pick out a group of people, Jews, and kill them. How the Democrat Party ever let this insanity seep into its thinking, well, that's easy to see, isn't it? They were trying to buy the votes of every minority they could, except the black one, who they assumed and took for granted would continue to vote for them, despite the fact the Democrat Party hasn't done a goddamn thing for black populations anywhere in the country in the entire life of the Democratic Party, which in fact has spent its entire life holding back the black population. It was the Democrats that owned the slaves, owned the slave plantations, ran the slave auctions, owned the slave ships. Democrats that did Jim Crow, segregation, the KKK, resegregation in World War I by Wilson. This is the Democrat Party. They opposed the civil rights movements in the 64. That was a Republican movement. Lincoln was a Republican who freed the slaves. The Republican Party was specifically started only 7 years earlier in 1956 to free the slaves. That was the central tenet, the only plank of the Republican Party's formation. Free the slaves. That was it. That was the purpose of starting the Republican Party. And throughout their history, they've been the ones that have advanced the interests of the black population, supporting the 13th, the 14th, and the 15th Amendments, which freed the slaves, gave them civil rights and the right to vote, and made them citizens. The Democrats opposed all three amendments. And the Democrats resegregated the blacks in the teens in World War I. And maintained that policy all through the Roosevelt administration into World War II. Until combat in World War II finally compelled the federal government to confront the truth that the black troops could be much more useful fighting rather than cooking. But make no mistake about it, it was the Democrat Party that has held them back the whole time. And now it's the Democrat Party lying to them and stealing from them the budget dollars that should be allocated to those elements of the population in the city. Let's face it, most of our cities in America, what's the poor population composed of? The blacks. Where should money for food, housing, medical attention, where should that be focused? On the poor, on the need, in the cities, primarily black and Hispanic populations, the minority populations. Where's it going? The liberals are giving the money to illegal immigrants. They're housing them in hotels, for God's sake. Hotels, first-class hotels. And the hotels are getting rich. And the domestic population is being left out of the benefits. Nothing for you. No housing, no food, no transportation, no credit card, no help with businesses. All of these things are for illegal aliens. Because we're going to register them to vote in state elections and they won't know the difference between state and federal. They'll only know it's an election. So they'll go and vote in federal elections and we'll maintain our congressional majority and we'll maintain a larger apportionment of seats in the party than we should be allowed under a proper census count, which is how congressional seats are determined across the 50 states, as well as electoral college votes. So if you can keep and count a larger population in a state where citizens are leaving, like California, New York, and Illinois, if they can be replaced with illegal aliens who were counted in the census, suddenly the states that are being abandoned because of high taxes, they aren't losing congressional representation. They're maintaining it. But they're no longer representing citizens, are they? Now they're representing the foreign population, where the budget priorities are being placed, to whom the money is being given at the expense of the poor American population of blacks and Hispanics. I mean, this has been going on now for 15 years in the open. It's actually been going on since World War II, but not with the replacement policy, only with the promise to deliver and then keeping the money for themselves and their administrators. Because that's what happens to the budgets they put into these programs, isn't it? Somehow the money never ends up installing internet at the person's home. It just gets consumed by a bureaucracy that has to manage a proposed contract for 10 to 15 years. Oh, you think I'm exaggerating? Check the California high-speed rail project. See if I'm exaggerating. No, I'm not exaggerating. I'm telling you how it goes. Nobody knows where the money ends up at these programs. There's no auditing, there's no accounting, there's no disclosure. We only know that somehow the Democrats keep raising lots and lots of money to bring in tons of votes 3 days after the election that swing the result. All by mail. Oh, look, there isn't even a mail stamp on it. Oh, don't worry about that. This guy isn't registered. Oh, don't worry about that. Now count every vote. Count every vote. No, you count every legal vote that hasn't already been counted once before. You don't just count every vote. That's how elections get stolen. Just like Biden stole his election in 2020. The elections got stolen out in California. And God only knows how many other elections the corrupt and crooked far left has stolen. God only knows. And the Democrats, actually the whole American population, half of which Democrats, have been so dumbed down by a lack of any public school education, the party just drinks the Kool-Aid. It's mind-boggling. It's like Jonestown. Oh, you have Kool-Aid. Can I have some? How come everybody who drinks the Kool-Aid is falling over? Can I have some? Doesn't matter what it is. Biden, oh no, he's not demented. From day one he was demented. I told you that at the time. He was never competent to hold the office. Not from day one. Oh, but the mainstream media and, oh no, they defended his ass right up until he defeated we finally defeated, what did he say? I forget. We finally defeated Medicare, Medicaid. We finally defeated it. It's like, excuse me, what? Harris? Oh, Harris is a qualified candidate. Never mind, she never won a primary or got enough votes to even be competitive. We're going to select her ass. That's democracy? They pick your candidates? Hillary wasn't the voted candidate. Bernie Sanders was, but Hillary was selected. Biden was selected. Kamala was selected. There's no democracy in the Democratic Party. You're being ruled. But the Democratic Party members drink the Kool-Aid. COVID, vaccine, no oil or gasoline. Let's raise the prices to over $10 a gallon in California and everything will be good and fine. As long as you don't have to work and the only thing you do is deposit the check you get from the government or live off the EBT card, yeah, everything will be fine for you, but everything around you will collapse. Okay, this is Thomas Fried on the Liberty Works Radio Network. I hear that second commercial break coming back up. We'll be back in 5 with more. Okay, this is Thomas Frieda on the Liberty Works Radio Network. Let's just get right back into this. As the commercial break came up, I was saying it doesn't seem to matter what nonsense the Democrat Party leadership and mainstream media, in cahoots with them, push on the Democratic Party members. They all buy into it. I was going through the list. Biden is competent. Harris is electable. COVID didn't come from China. The vaccine didn't come from a lab. It isn't a biological weapon developed by the Chinese military and released into the rest of the world after it was accidentally released from Wuhan into that city, where I might say they banned all flights from Wuhan to anywhere in China. But guess what they didn't ban? Any flights from Wuhan to any other major capital in the world. They exported it for 3 months before the American people and the American government even knew it was there. The Chinese military exported it for 3 months. What else did they buy into? I said, no oil or gas. Drive the price up. We'll be fine. Oh, how come my electricity bill's so high? How come there's all this inflation? You idiot. Oil is a component in the price of everything. You drive up the price of oil and gasoline, you drive up the price of everything. You create inflation. Not real inflation, but artificial inflation by policy. And of course, they did create inflation by printing $16 trillion during COVID to bump the M1 money supply from 6 to 21. Oh, but that won't hurt you. We'll just pass the money out. Everything will be fine. Everybody bought into it. No illegal immigrants or criminals, so the cartels sell drugs without consequence and kill 100,000 people a year with fentanyl. Critical race theory. They bought it. Black lives matter, but other lives don't? What, are you kidding? But they bought it. Abortion in the 7th, 8th, and 9th month. Infanticide, literal infanticide. We're all for it. It's okay. Single largest cause of death in the United States on an annual basis. No ICE. No ICE. Let's not have any border control because we're going to have open borders. Let everybody in and enroll them to vote. No immigration, no border, no criminal prosecution. This and the Democrat Party laps up this pablum like it's Kool-Aid. This is the prescription to destroy the city that lives by these principles or lack thereof. And the Democrats have the gall to accuse the Republican Party of being without morality? Are you kidding me? It's the Democrat Party's policies that have no morality in them. None whatsoever. They're prejudicial, discriminatory, and confiscatory, if not open robbery and theft by extortion. Which, of course, is the system we have that poses as tax, isn't it? It's not a tax system. It's a system of extortion, robbery, and theft by judicial corruption and judicial legislation that abandons the law and the constitutional systems of private property and of a limited representative government to replace it with the communist ruling maxims of the Communist Manifesto. The second plank, graduated income tax, because the Constitution calls for uniformity in taxation of the citizens, not graduated, which is class legislation, which is the design to divide the population and keep them at war with one another because of the different laws imposed on each class with respect to rates of tax. And that's the class warfare system we see playing out in our city streets. So after Moore the Supreme Court decision that says the income tax is not the direct tax under the 16th Amendment that the circuit and lower courts, the circuit and district courts and states have been enforcing on the American people since the end of World War II. 75 years of complete outright judicial fraud. It's not a non-apportioned direct tax under the 16th Amendment. It's an indirect tax under Article 1, Section 8. Impost on foreigners and foreign imports, duties on exports and excises on commodities, licenses, and corporations. Where's the tax on a citizen's labor? Where's the tax on rent, interest, dividends, commissions, compensation, alimony, annuities? Where are any of these things taxed by impost, duty, or excise? They aren't, unless they're earned by a foreigner or a corporation. Then they're taxed. But citizens aren't subject to that indirect taxation. Their activities and transactions are conducted under right and state law, except or involving import, export, interstate commerce, commodities, licenses, and corporate earnings. Citizens are free of the corporate powers. You need to step into or under one of their umbrellas to be subject to any federal power to tax. This fraudulent claim that you're subject to tax because you actually had the gall to work and earn money is a lie. It's unconstitutional direct taxation without limitation or apportionment of the tax to the several states. No direct tax is allowed. There's no transaction or activity conducted subject to impost, duty, or excise taxation under the Constitution. The whole thing is a fraud. The whole thing is a fraud. And it has been since the end of World War II. The only people benefiting from this are the politicians who are using the class warfare and the divide and the warfare in the streets that it has bred to usurp ever more authority to rule over the conflict they created in order to usurp more authority. Because what happens in a civil class warfare system that plays out on the streets? Well, you have the violence of the class warfare, first of all, playing out, and then you have members of both parties constantly calling out to the political class, the ruling class, to step in and write new law to stop the class warfare manifesting itself in the streets as a result of the bad policy and law already adopted. So instead of the citizens being united in a representation and telling the government to get inside your box and stay there, you have limited powers, not unlimited. You got no business in any of these arenas. Get out! Instead of the government being forced to represent, it's allowed to rule, because both sides, the entire population, is constantly asking the federal government to step in and intervene in the conflict it engineered in order to be asked to step in and intervene and usurp more power over every arena that they're able to establish, instigate this type of insurrectional violence between the classes, whether it be on income or housing or property ownership or net worth. They're always looking for one class of persons to go after, to make the enemy, so that it can never be a unified population that is represented by the whole government. And of course, the inevitable result of this class warfare system being adopted under these communist planks, intended to divide, designed to divide, you never get representation of a unified people. You have nothing but division and Divided we fall. United we stand, divided we fall. Politicians have intentionally divided the American people in order to take advantage of the class warfare that's inevitable in any such division of the population, whether it be based on race, religion, income, earnings, wealth, property, appearance, whatever. It's the division that the politicians are taking advantage of to rule. It's what keeps them in power. It's what makes them possible to run up 40 trillion in debt while both parties continue to yell for the government to spend more money. When they shouldn't be allowed to write those checks because it's not authorized under the Constitution for them to be involved in any of these arenas that they're trying to steal authority from or to extort the states into adopting the federal policy instead of their own independent policy that would serve their people. The federal government corrupts every state and assumes the authority, the central authority that dictates the master plan to every state. Which, as I said before, things in Maine aren't going to work the same as they do in Arizona or California and Delaware or Florida and Washington. Every region has different demographics and realities that will need to be considered within any and every policy adopted by the state government in that region. On all of these arenas, energy, education, agriculture, they need to be different in every state. They can't be centralized under the federal government without screwing up 3/4 of the states. But this is what we have happening in every arena. Energy, environment, agriculture, education, the federal government is controlling through central authority decisions that should be made independent of federal extortive pressure. Where if the state doesn't adopt the federal education agenda of critical race theory, new math, and no more civics, God's sake, don't teach them civics. We need them subservient, not independent. But if the state doesn't adopt that enslaved or enslaving educational curriculum, or lack thereof of curriculum that's meaningful and beneficial, well, then the state doesn't get any federal money, does it? No, that federal budget is withheld, and the state doesn't get the money. And this is how the federal government has weaseled its way into every state's operation, because only the federal government has unlimited access to funds at the Federal Reserve Bank to fund programs in agriculture, energy, housing, environment, occupational safety, etc., etc., etc. The states don't have the monies to do stupid things in those arenas, like stop drilling for oil and gas and start building windmills that need a 100% replacement backup system in case the wind stops blowing or it gets dark with the case of solar systems. So the federal government perverts and corrupts, and all of this excess spending funds its own people, its own supporters, with kickbacks to the contractors that bribe them to get the solar contract or put up the windmills. It's all fraud, and it all needs to end, or America is going to end as a constitutional republic. You can see that with the communists being elected in New York. It's time to stand up, get informed, and fight back. Head over to taxfreedom.com. Stop reading. Start reading. Tell your friends, neighbors, family, and business associates it's time to get informed, even if you're not ready to act. Okay, this is Thomas Freed. We'll be back next week with more.